My neighbor down the road asked me to show how we butcher our deer. Most people just take them down to the butcher shop and have them do it, but it's really not that hard. We don't get any fancy cuts or anything, or don't really know how to do it as far as the butchers do, but what we do ends up pretty good. If it fits in a pan, it fries up, or cook pot, it'll cook up. First thing you need to do, of course, is to skin him. This deer has been hanging since the 17th. Today is the 26th, so it's been hanging for 9 days. It's cool in here, probably below 40 degrees, and at the highest point. So it should be pretty tasty. My Uncle Fred mainly is the one. Uncle Fred and Uncle Bill are the ones that showed me how to do this. Uncle Fred, you've all seen his work. He's a commercial artist, and he's the guy that did the tail fin for Alaska Airlines, that Eskimo. So, anyway, I'll get this guy skinned and we'll take him in the house. Okay, we got him peeled, and no matter how careful you are skinning them, you end up with little hairs that you can't help but get on there, and they're hard to get off. I was watching a video here a few days ago about a guy that was saying an easy way to do this, and I never thought of doing it this way, and so give it a try. It's something I haven't never tried before, but he's using a propane burner and just burning the hairs off. So let's give that a whirl, see how that turns out. He said that I was a little bit worried that maybe there'd be kind of a strange taste from burnt hair, but he says there's not, so give it a try. Well, that worked somewhat. Not as well as I had kind of expected it to. There's still a few hairs and things. I think it's maybe because it's fresh skinned and still kind of damp. The looks like the majority of them kind of burnt off though. Next thing we do, the parts of the deer that I like the best is the heart meat, the back straps. Cindy kind of messed up that a little bit right here, and these inside tenderloins, they call them. I got kind of a funny story on that. My cousin helped a guy pack out a deer one time that had never hunted before, and he told him that the first thing he needed to do, they were going to bone it out, put them in backpacks. The first thing he needed to do was to get rid of the poison glands, because those can really be bad for you. And so he cut out these two tenderloins and called them poison glands, and told the fella that you really don't want to leave those in the woods because it'll kill anything that comes across them. So he got the tenderloins out of that guy's deer, which I thought was kind of funny, but sort of a dirty trick. So anyway, let's cut all those out and go from there. Okay, so we got those cut out. Show you what they look like. They're just little strips of meat that are really very tender. They're a little more than a foot long, probably by a couple, 2 or 3 inches wide, and really tender. That's some of the best part of the deer. So if you ever help somebody carry an elk out of the woods and you got to bone it up in the woods, make sure you get those poison glands and offer to carry them out for them, because I mean, do them a favor and make sure that they're not left in the woods. Well, next comes the back straps, and that is this strip of meat from about the hip down about to the shoulder here. It's a long muscle that it's also really tender, and some of the best part of the deer. Cindy's shot was a little bit far back, and it was uphill, so it went in here, and it came out the spine right here, and probably bruised this area right in here. That, I mean, some of this is just surface stuff. So hopefully she didn't mess up that too badly. But next is to cut out the back straps, so we'll go ahead and do that next. This deer does not have a lot of fat on him. Sometimes the fat is about an inch thick, and I kind of judge that by the way the weather's going to be in the winter. Looking out the door though, we are having a little bit of snow coming down. That's really small flakes, but it's not sticking, so hard to say. It might be a bad winter, it might not. It sure started out as an early winter. We had snow the 28th of September. Alright, so that's the bloodshot one. It's not too bad. She didn't ruin very much meat. This little section, probably 3-4 inches there, will be thrown out. The rest of it looks pretty good. That side, it doesn't have really any bloodshot at all. This is all surface. That'll come off. So there's some really good eating meat right there. Next, the reason I removed those before doing this is I don't want to chop those up. And the next easiest thing to do is to quarter this so you can work on 1/4 at a time up at the house. And the best way I've found to do that is one of these little S-wing, E-swing, I'm not sure how you say it, hatchets. They're thin, and they get really sharp. They're a good little hatchet for this. Now first thing I do is cut down one side. You don't really want to mess that up. Okay, just like that. And I don't cut down the spine itself. Supposedly we don't have the chronic wasting disease in Idaho, but I've never had Fish and Game ask me to have any of mine tested, so I don't know how much they're really looking for it. And they say that that is in the brain and in the spinal fluid. So I don't cut into the spine, and I cut alongside of it. Oop, that one's gonna tear off. Okay, this is gonna have to be changed a little bit. That's gonna split off. I'm gonna have to turn this off and tie this up. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, so that's basically what I wanted to do anyway, but not quite just yet. If you cut it into quarters, then you can take it into the house, and it's a lot easier to work on one little section at a time. This other one, when it comes time to do it, I'll do this side first. When it comes time to do it, I'll cut that one into quarters also. Okay, the most important thing about deer meat is to get all the fat you can off, whatever dirt and stuff. The bloodshot, dried up stuff off. And lots of catfish food.
Don't give them too much. Remember last time you didn't eat.
Yeah. And that's all there is to the poison glands. Just wash them off and wrap them up. Backstrap, we cut into butterfly steaks. You cut almost all the way through. The next one you cut all the way through. But because there's a tendon along the edge, slice up alongside that tendon and get that off. That way you end up with a little steak like that when you unfold it. These are good. There's no fat on them. I mean, they're just really good meat. Hind quarter, start by cutting the flank off and get as much of this fat off as you can. Any of these little chunks of meat like that we throw over into the stew meat pile or hamburger. Sometimes we grind it up.
We got lots of hamburgers, so we'll just do all stew meat this time.
Okay. Somebody said that we got lots of hamburgers, so all stew meat this time. Yeah, the fat on deer and elk, most game meat actually, gives it kind of a bad flavor. The more of that you can get off, the better. This white line there is kind of where the leg bone is, so cut right along that. Cut it into roasts is what we usually do, or you could cut into steaks or whatever. It's kind of hard to make steaks unless you have a saw, and I don't really want the bone in there anyway. Okay, and there's another. That's all that one is. Hey, the silver stuff, that's pretty darn chewy. On a roast, you're kind of stuck leaving it in there unless you want to just cut the whole thing into pieces. Sometimes you can get a little bit of it out of there. It's a tendon is what it is. And from there, if you wanted to make steaks, meat has grain like a tree does. It runs this way. You want to cut crossways to the grain. But we're just making roast, so it doesn't, you don't have to worry about that. Hey, another nice big roast. And all this little stuff that's left on the bones, we cut up for stew meat and clean them all up as best we can. Or hamburger meat. The lower legs, there's a lot of tendons and that silver meat in it, and it's pretty chewy and kind of time consuming to get out. So mainly what I do with that is I just cut off as much as I can, and then you gotta get all this stuff here out of there, which is really time consuming. So that I cut up into stew meat. I just thin this out after everything else is done. So that's the hind quarter after it's all done. The birds will like the rest of that, or the bears. The flank, this one's got a little bit of bloodshot on it. It's real thin, so it makes either good stew meat or jerky meat. So basically, the front end is the same as the other end. The shoulder has no ball joints. You can cut that clear on through without any troubles. There's a stripe right here that goes across the shoulder blade, and there's a ridge right there. In fact, here, I'll show you. Right there. No, that's not it. There's a ridge right here. So you have this side of the meat, that side of the meat. And this is the same way with this one. You'll end up with two pretty good sized chunks of meat. On a bigger animal like an elk or a bigger deer, you might be able to make a roast out of that. The front end, I end up making a lot of slabs like this, and I'll make this into jerky. What else is left, it'll end up being mainly stew meat, or other years we'll have hamburger. Cindy says we got plenty of hamburger, we don't need it this year. The neck itself, you have all the vertebrae in here, and so it's hard to get a big chunk of meat out of there. That will all be stew meat, or hamburger. And really, that's about all there is to it. The professionals, of course, do a better job. They've got saws, they've got fancy grinders, they've got squawking birds that are in other people's houses. And it doesn't take them very long. But overall, I think we end up with a little bit more meat than if you have it taken to a butcher, because we have one to do. They have a dozen, maybe more. And they don't have the time to scrape the bones and get every little speck off. And it will be, because of the video being long and boring already, I'm not showing that, but we'll go back through all these bones and we'll kind of scrape off the bigger chunks of meat and try to save as much as we can. But anyway, if you're if you're paying a butcher to do this, it adds up fast. It gets really expensive, and it's really not that hard. It's time consuming. It'll take us most of a day to at least half a day to do a deer. But if you can save $100 or more, it's worth it. So you're out there hunting them for the meat, maybe for horns, depending on who you are. I'm more for the meat. The horns are good, but I haven't found a good recipe for them yet. So all they really do is hang on the wall and collect cobwebs. But if you're trying to save money over buying grocery store meat, butcher your own. I mean, you can do it for free. Well, not free. You still have to buy your paper, tape, saran wrap, that kind of thing. And it takes you some time. If you value your time that much, then maybe it's not worth it to you. But me, I got other things I should be doing, but I'm not doing them. I'm doing this instead. So anyhow, thanks again for watching. I hope you found this interesting. I was asked to do this video. I kind of think it's going to be long and boring and probably not worth watching. But if you stuck around this long, thank you very much. See you next time.